Okay, so we're on 97A, the bottom 96B. We're trying to figure out why the shulchan, why the table is susceptible to impurity, to tumah. So first we said, well, because it's movable, it is movable. It would show it with the bread on it. Then we started discussing, well, maybe since it has a gold plating, when you determine impurity, you don't go after the wood, right? The interior, you go after the exterior. Because regular wood just sitting there is not susceptible to tumah. It has to have something, either it's similar, it has a receptacle, or it's movable. So we started discussing maybe it has you go after the exterior. Since the exterior is gold, so that's why it would be susceptible to tumah. So we said Milo Tanan, we'll just review the mission for a second. Hashulchan v'adulbaki, a table or a kind of table that's going to hold food or chairs, nifkasu o shechifan b'shayish. Either it got broken, and part of it usually it's covered with marble. The shire behind makam manachos cups, and you left a space on the table to put down cups. Tmein, since marble is stone, and stone is not makabel tumah, not susceptible to impurity. If some of it was broken and there's no stone there, and it's used to hold the cups, it's going to be impure. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, makam hanachas chatikas shire, makam hanachas chatikos, a place you're going to leave meat. Either way, it's used for the part that's broken, that's not covered in stone, is used for holding something, and therefore it could be susceptible to impurity. Says the Gemara, shire and lo shire lo. It's only if you leave it over, meaning if you have a part that is not covered with marble, then it will be susceptible to impurity. But if it's covered over with marble, sounds like you go after the exterior. Says the Gemara, well, maybe you'll say v'chitema kan b'tzipui omed kan b'tzipui she'ein omed. Maybe you'll say it depends. You only go after the external if it's something which is like hammered in, it's nailed in, it's permanent. But our table's golden plate in the base of Mikdash was not like that. So therefore, you should not go after the external. That itself is a question. Reish Lakish asked this Chavrusa, Rabbi Yochanan. On this Mishnah, Reish Lakish asked Rabbi Yochanan, what kind of external marble is this Mishnah talking about? Is it talking about one that's permanently nailed in or not? B'shchifa, next page, b'shchifa as levazvizin, o b'shelo chifa as levazvizin. Is it talking about a case where you surrounded the frame, the setting? If you covered that, is that enough to go after the exterior or not? The Amar Lei and Rabbi Yochanan said back to Reish Lakish, it doesn't matter if the external is permanently attached to the table or not. It doesn't matter if the surrounding setting, the surrounding frame was covered. And it doesn't matter. Sounds like either way you would go after the external. Doesn't make a difference. Okay, now maybe you'll say the chitim that our table in the base of Mikdash is atzei shitim and they're chashivi velo batli. Maybe you'll say that not every wood is made the same. The regular wood, you're right, is not susceptible to impurity. Wood that is unique, expensive, fancy wood, that will be susceptible to tumah. And since our table in the base of Mikdash is atzei shitim, it's shitim wood. So that's unique and special. That's expensive, fancy wood, and therefore it would be susceptible to impurity. Says the Gemara, well, that depends. Reish Lakish differentiates between askalgis wood and misames wood. Askalgis wood is a cheaper wood you get from overseas, not so good. Will not be susceptible to impurity. However, Reish Lakish says the sasmes wood, this fancy wood, That's chashivi. It's important. Velo batli, and it cannot be and it will not be nullified, and meaning that it will be susceptible to impurity. So according to Reish Lakish, since our wood is shitim wood, that's also a fancier wood. It will be susceptible and not and it will accept tumah. Sorry, 1 second. One second. Let's back up for 1 second. You have wood on our table, and then you have gold on top. So the question is, sorry, should have spoken this out. If you would go after the external part of the table and not the internal part, the wood, and you go after the gold and not the wood, it means that the wood has been nullified, meaning you don't look at it as important. The reason to go after the external part and not the internal part is because the internal part is not important. So when you have a table of, let's say, $5 wood, and then you cover with $3 million carat gold, diamond carat gold, so then which part is the important part of your table? Obviously the gold, not the wood. So maybe you'll say that's what I'm saying, that our table is so important. It's shitim wood, that therefore you would not go after the external part. You'd go after the internal part, and the internal part is wood, and wood is not susceptible to impurity. So if not for the fact that you would lift it up, it would not be susceptible to impurity, because it is it's really wood, not gold, because wood is important. You can't disregard the wood. So that's only going to work if you go like Reish Lakish, who says that there's a kind of wood, the misamis wood, which is important, and therefore cannot be nullified. You cannot, if you have not fancy wood with a external setting on top of it, you can't disregard the wood. And therefore, as long as it's wood and it's not movable, it will not be susceptible to impurity. So that's very good for Reish Lakish. But Elul Rabbi Yochanan, Samis Nami Batli, according to Rabbi Yochanan, that says we always go after the external. Even the fancy wood doesn't matter. At the end of the day, this is the part this is the part that's probably holding the bread that it's used for. So you look at the external part of the table and you go after that. If that would be true, then we would disregard the wood, look at the external gold, and gold would be able to be mekabel tumah. It would be susceptible to impurity. So this is only going to be good for Reish Lakish and not for Rabbi Yochanan. So Ma'ikal Ameimer, what are you going to say for Rabbi Yochanan? So we'll say that even Rabbi Yochanan, even if you have a fancy external part, still, even if you have a fancier wood, still says that you go after the external part, but maybe he'll agree, shiny shulchan, the table is different because the Rachmana Karya Eitz. Even though the table has an external, the gold on top of the table, this whole tabletop, the setting on top, but the Torah or the Nach, the Navi refers to the table as wood. So when you have a table and you have the external, even Rabbi Yochanan, who says that no matter how fancy the wood is, it's going to be nullified to the external part. But when we see that the table itself is called wood, so that gives it importance, and therefore you can't disregard it. And therefore, even if the gold accepts the tumah, but the wood, it's called wood, and wood, if you wouldn't lift it up, would not be susceptible to impurity. Shin Namar, HaMizbeach Eitz says the Mizbeach is Eitz, Shalosh Amos Gavoa, Arko Shtayim Amos. It's a 3 Amos. Talking about the altar. The altar is it's of wood, 3 Amos in height, 2 Amos in length. Umiktzos low, and it's miktzos. It's corners. HaMizbeach Eitz, Shalosh Amos. Gavoa, Arko Shtayim Amos, Umiktzos low, has its corners, V'arko v'kiryosav Eitz. And its corners and its length and its walls are all wood. And so when he said to me, he's saying that Hashem said to him, this is the table that's before Hashem. So says the Gemara, Pasach b'mizbeach v'sayim b'shulchan. It's just a funny pasuk. Starts with the altar, ends with the table. You should start with the altar and end with the altar, or start with the table, end with the table. Why do you split it? Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Lazar, Damitravayu, Bisman, Shabes. I make this very interesting. Kayam. So 1 second. So the table is referred to as wood. So therefore, since the table is referred to as wood, that makes the wood important. And therefore, even if it has a gold setting, we say that you can't nullify the fact that it's wood. And wood is not susceptible to impurity. And therefore, if not for the fact that you would lift it up and it's movable, which makes it similar to a sack, therefore it's susceptible to impurity. But without that, it would not be susceptible to impurity. Then we had a technical problem that the verse starts with altar, ends with table. So why does it do that? And this is a very interesting, Gemara. Next time you're thinking twice about having guests over, it says, "Bisman shebeis hamikdash kayam," when the base of Mikdash was standing. So what happened? Mizbeach mechaper, the altar would atone ala adam, on a person. The achshav she'ein base of Mikdash kayam, and now that we don't have the temple, what atones for us? Very interesting. Shulchano shel adam mechaper alav, a person's table atones for us. Rashi says because he gives charity, he gives food to guests. So therefore, the table is one that atones for us. Yeah. Okay. Fine. So that is that. At the end of the day, the table will only be susceptible to impurity because it gets lifted up. It's immovable. But if not for that, it would not be susceptible to impurity. Now, we have these arba snifin, shows up these 4 panels of wood that, as you go up to the table, they open to have room for the rods. Arba snifin shows up. And how many rods? We had 28 rods. Menahan immediately, how do I know? Amar of Katina, Amar Kra, says the verse in Shmos. Vasisa Ka'aros. So here comes the list of vessels. I think in Parshas Truma. Vasisa Ka'arosav, Vekaposav, Uksosav, Umenikosav, Asher Yusach Ben Zav. 4 different vessels that were covered in gold, pure gold. So what are all these things referring to? So Karosav, Elu Tusim. Karosav are the molds. Kaposav, Elu Bazichin. So Kaposav, I was referring to Bazichin, referring to the cups where they had the frankincense. Ksosav, Elu Snifin. Ksosav are the Stephen, these 4 panels we're talking about. Uminikosav, Elu Kanim. And the minikosav are the rods that are going to hold up the bread. Then, now we're jumping to, we're staying there. Asher Yusak Behen, that you would coat them. Shemesachin Behen es alechem. This is referring to that Shemesachin, they would hover over the bread, like sach. They would cover the bread, meaning because they would be right there, holding up the bread. So you'd have poles on top and the bottom of the bread. So it's like it's covering over the bread. Okay. Now, yeah. Now, Mosif Rava lo cedar akanim below netilasan dokos is a Shabbos. Rava's asking on our Mishnah. I don't understand the not the placing of the rods and not the removing of the rods. Push away Shabbos. Now, if you just told me it's biblical, these sakadai the raisa mind dokos is Shabbos. Meaning, if it was rabbinical, I understand. We don't push away Shabbos. But if it's rabbinic, why don't we have a dispensation? How is it able to push? If it's biblical, so then why is it not pushing away the Shabbos? If it's rabbinic, I understand. But if it's a biblical obligation to have these things there, so why is it not push away the Shabbos? You have to have the bread there on Shabbos. Why can't this push away the Shabbos? The setting up and the taking down. So then Rava asked, and Rava answered. Hadar Rava. Rava said, "Lav Milson." That's not a question. Why? The Amri we say like this. Our Mishnah, the Tanan Klal Amar Rabbi Akiva Kol Malkash After Allah Sosa Mer Shabbos, Ein Adokas Shabbos. So any act which you could do before Shabbos is not push away Shabbos. These poles don't need to push away the Shabbos. It's able to not push away Shabbos. Why? What's the reason for the poles? To make a little bit of space between the loaves of bread so that they shouldn't spoil. Says the Gemara, in that period of time of when you put them on Shabbos until Motzi Shabbos, that's too little time to cause mold, to cause spoilage. It's not going to spoil. Kidetanya, as we say in the following brayse, like Kate said, Nichnas Meretz. How did it all work out? Nichnas Meretz Shabbos, you'd come Erev Shabbos or something. You'd go and you would remove and place the poles along the length of the table. I think in between the two settings, and then Motzi, and then you on Shabbos you'd put the bread on, and then Motzi Shabbos and Nichnas you would come in again. Magbia Rosha Shel Challah lifts up the head of the challah and put a pole under it. The Chazar Magbia Rosha Shel Challah, and you do this for each one of the loaves until you finish all 12 of them. Well, really, it's going to be, we'll see in a second, not really 12, it's going to really be 10/8. Why? Arba chalos tzrichos shlosha. 4 of the loaves need 3 poles. Those 4 is only really 2, 3, and 4, and 5. 2 through 5 need 3 rods each. Shlosha kan. Ha'elyona, the top loaf, eina tzrich ela shnayim. It only needs 2. Why? She'ein aleha masur. There's nothing on top of it pushing down. So 2 is going to be enough. Hatachtona, the bottom one, eina tzricha kolikar. It doesn't need anything. Why? Because on the table, the shemunachas al tahara shel shok, and it's sitting on the purity of the table. So you have the bottom loaf. You have 12 loaves. The bottom and you have 2 settings. You have two shelving units made up of 6 and 6. The bottom of each one on the table. The top of each one only has 2 poles supporting. You don't need more than that. The 4 in the middle have 3 poles each, and that's how you get the 28. And you would only put the poles between the loaves of bread. You would put it only. You would put it only after Shabbos, since on Shabbos we're not worried about spoilage. Okay, here comes the pictures. So we're going to now discuss the dimensions of the temple, specifically, what size amma did they use? So, for example, in amma, it can be sometimes 6 tvachim, sometimes 5 tvachim, sometimes maybe 4 tvachim. So the question is, which tefach did they use in the temple? So let's see. Okay, so Tanan Hasam Tez the Mishnah in Mesechus Kelim says as follows: Rabbi Meir Omer Kol Amos Shahayu B'Mikdash Benonios. All the Amos, whenever you see an Amma in reference to the temple, so Beinonis referring to 6 tvachim. That's called a Beinonis. So the Amos are 6, except for Chutz Mi Mizbeach HaZahav, the golden altar, which is the inner altar. We know we had 2 altars. This is the inner one. The HaKeren, the HaSovev, the HaYesod. So the Keren is referring to the other altar. It's called the Mizbeach HaOlah, which it had 4 corners, 4 stones around it. And those 4 corners were not measured by this 6 tvachim. Then you had the Sovev and the Yesod, which are all going to be explained, which is the bottom. Good picture. Do they have one here? No. I guess we'll see it later. But it's going to be the bottom. So let's see. Mine's on the next page. Okay, probably yours also in the article. So the Yesod is that bottom base, right? That's 1 amma, and you have the Sovev. So the Sovev is that whole. So you had this 1 amma base, right? It's like a 3-layer cake. Yeah, so you had the 1 amma base. Then you had this Sovev, which is much bigger. On top of the Sovev, then you had the actual the actual top of the altar. That top of the altar had these four horns, these koronos, these four horns, and in the middle of those four horns is the place of the pyre where they would burn. So you had the yisod, then you had the sovev, and then you had the top where you'd had these four koronos. It's all by the mizbeach ha'olah. So now, once again, Rabbi Meir said that all the amos except for these were 6 tachim, and except for these that were 5 tachim. So you had one. When it refers to amos, it's referring to 5 tachim. Okay, that's Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, he said, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Amas binyan shisha tachim. The amos of the structure was 6 tachim, and the vessels were 5 tachim. V'shel kelim chamisha. So now, and here we're going to take a verse in Yecheskel, and we're going to give at least 2, maybe 3, I think 2 explanations to how they got to where they got. So, Amar Rabbi Yochanan v'shnei mikra echad darshu. So they're both interpreting the verse from Yecheskel in the 43rd chapter. The Eila midos hamizbeach ba'amos. Ama. So these are the measurements of the tabernacle. Be'amos, with amos. Ama betofech. There was an ama tofech v'chek. There's an ama, and each ama was an ama and a tefach. So meaning it was really 5 tefachim plus 1 tefach. It was an amma, which is 5 tefachim plus 1 tefach. And then we're going to now say a bunch of words, which depends how you interpret these words, will determine if you learn it to be 5 or 6. So let's see. So then it says v'chek ha'ama. So the chek ha'ama, the chek right now is saying, let's say it's the base. The chek ha'ama, the amma rochev, and the width is going to be an amma. The gvula el sfasa saviv zeres ha'echad v'zeh gav hamizbeach. So the amma is the width of the border. To its edge is going to be 1/2 of an amma, and all around is going to be this 5 tefach amma is the top of the altar. Okay, so what do all these words mean? Chek ha'ama, when the pasuk in Yecheskel referred to the chek ha'ama, zeh yisod. That's referring to that bottom part. That's referring to A in the picture. Zeh yisod, that is the base. That is the base of the altar. Yeah. So that's the chek. The chek is hama zeh yisod. Zeh yisod ama. Rochev. What does it mean? The rochev, the surrounding parts. That's referring to zeh sovev. That is the part around. That's going to be already the sovev is the part on top of that, the second layer. So here it's on C. That's going to be the rochev. So the base is an amma. So chek amma zeh yisod, amma rochev zeh sovev. Translates as the ledge. Okay. And then ugvula el svasa saviv zeres ha'echad. What does it mean that the border to its edge is going to be 1/2 an amma all around? That's the horns. So that's the horns. That's on the top layer. Here it is, G. That's going to be also in. That's also going to be a amma. Okay. So even though most of it was measured with 6 tefachim amas, these parts that we just mentioned, the chek, the yisod, and the sovev, and the kronos, are all really 5 tefach amas. Okay. Then it says, that's, okay, so now, Rabbi Meir, zeh gav hamizbeach, zeh mizbeach hazav. And that's also how you measure the golden altar, the one that's inside. Now, Rabbi Meir Savar, Zehu ba'ama bas chamisha. Rabbi Meir says that here comes the dispute between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Huda. Rabbi Meir Savar, Zehu ba'ama bas chamisha, that these amos here are referring to an amma of 5 tvachim, but hakol amos kalim, the amma bashesh, but everything else is referring to amos that are 6 tvachim. Rabbi Yehuda Savar, kazeyu kol amos kalim. No, these 5 tvachim amos is what we had. These 6 tvachim amos. Yeah, just like the mizbech hazav, everything else was also 6 tvachim. Now here's going to be the problem, because right now the way we learn to this pasuk, so if you look from the yisoid, the first layer, the ad soivev, we're saying now is ba'ama bas chamisha, begoiva. It's going to go, it's going to be 5 tvachim. So it's going to be that height from A through B, through C, through D is all 5 tvachim amos. Now, umayi cheka ama v'ama rochev. So what does it mean? Umayi cheka ama v'ama rochev. Halki ka'amar. Mecheka ama v'ad rochev v'ama bas chamisha. From the cheka ama and the rochev. So once again, if you see it, they did a very good job. Cheka ama and the rochev. So is going to be another ama. Another picture. See? Oh, no more pictures. So from the base of the amma to the width of the amma is also an amma of 5 tvachim. Yeah, I mean that whole area around B and C are all going to be 5 tefach ammas. Okay. Now, okay. So now, Gova HaMizbeach Kamahave. So at the end of the day, how tall was the Mizbeach? So Kamahave, it was Esser Amos. Esser Amos, Rashi tells us we know from Zvachim, it compares the Mishkan to the Mizbeach. Just like the Mishkan was Esser Amos, so to the Mizbeach. So it's Esser Amos. Now, this whole thing is 10 Amos. However, it's divided up with different dimensions. So which parts are the 5 tvachim, which parts are the 6 tvachim? So we say Kamahave. So Govensbeck Kamahave is Esser Amos. So Shis 6 of the Tvachim are B'nei Chamisha. The 6 of the Tvachim, the 6 of the Amos, sorry, are 5 Tvachim. B'nei Chamisha Chamisha. The Arba B'nei Shisa. And 4 of the Amos are 6 Tvachim. So 6 of the Amos are 5 tvachim. That's going to get you 30 tvachim. And then 4 Amos are 6 tvachim. That'll get you 24. So you're going to have a total now of 54 tvachim is the height of the altar, of the Mizbeach. So Mizbeach Kamahave Chamishin V'arba. So now we have a full height. It's going to be 54. What do you have to do now? For us to ask our question. Pal gave the Mizbeach Kamahave. So if you divide that in 2, the midpoint of the Mizbeach is going to be Esrim V'Shiva. It's going to be 27 tvachim. Now, Mikaranos V'Atzove, go from top down. So and that picture was from G, from these horns, the Ad Sovev is going to be the part where we're going to see now where they're going to do Malika. So that's going to be, that's right there. The Sovev is the second layer. If you go there from the top down until the first layer, Kamahave, so from the Karanos, Va'at Soviv Kamahave, Esrim Va'arba. From these Karanos down there is going to be 24. Kama, so now from there is 24, but then you have this midpoint. And on the midpoint of the altar was it's really from the bottom of the Karanos, not from the top of the Karanos. Doesn't make sense. From the bottom of the Karanos, this area, I think, is 24. Now, where was this red string that went across the midpoint? That is the Karanos Hatzoviv Kamahavi Esrim Ba'arba. It was 24. Kama Batsu the Palkanim is back. So how much is left till you get to the halfway point of the altar? Only 3 tvachim. is to get to 27 is only three. It's only three tvachim. 1 second. 1 second. Yeah. So okay, good. So that's going to be only 3 tvachim. Good. So now, what's wrong with that? What's wrong is the following. So once again, 54 tvachim is the height. The halfway point is 27, and the distance from the top, the koronos, to the saviv is going to be 24, which only gives you 3 tvachim of space until the halfway point. So it's really from the koronos down, only one level down. So you just from level 3, if you take an elevator, you go down from floor 3 to floor 2. That's going to be 24 tvachim. Another 3 tvachim below. So let's say you're standing on D in the picture. So if you're by D, right? So between you on D to the top of the horn is 24 tvachim. Between you and the midpoint of the entire altar is only 3 tvachim. Now, what's wrong with that? So we're going to see now how they're going to do malika. And the blood has to go in a certain place. And you have an amma of leeway. The problem is if you have an amma of leeway, if it goes below, we'll see your feet, an amma, you're still good to go. The problem is it has to be on top of the red string. So how could the Mishnah tell us that you have an amma of leeway? An amma is for sure, according to all opinions, more than 3 tvachim. So since an amma is more than 3 tvachim, and that's how much leeway you have to ensure that the malika either sprayed onto the altar, or we have 2 opinions, you put the bird up to the altar. So either way you go, it's not going to make sense with this way to interpret the verse that it's 54 tvachim, because then all you have is 3 tvachim of leeway if your malika goes a little bit lower than it's supposed to. And you have an amma of leeway. So that's the next part. This red string was in the middle. It went around in the middle to separate from the upper blood to the lower blood. Right, we had all those gemaras when if you sprinkle the lower blood on the bottom or the bottom blood on top, what's the halacha? So and Elahadatanya, the Brisa says, Gabi Ola's oath by the bird Ola. Ola, you would go up to the keves, you would go up on the ramp, upana lisoviv, and you would turn onto the soviv. Soviv is this area, is D. You'd be by the soviv. Ubalo likarendromus, you get to the Karendromus Mizrachis, the southeast corner, southeast corner, and then Molikas Rosh, you do Malika, Mimul Orba from the back of the neck, Umav, you'll separate, make sure you separate it from the body. Umotias Dama, either it means the blood would spritz, or it means you would place the bird onto the altar. Motias Dama al Kiram is Bayach. Now, that's what you have to do. Vim also lemata meiraglov, you have, if it would spritz in amma below your feet, afilu amma achatz kshera. Even 1 amma below your feet is going to be kosher. So now you have an amma of leeway, but 1 second, if you're by D, you only have 3 tvachim until you hit that midpoint, according to our calculation. So the problem is if you have an amma of leeway, hakayav elyona lamata mishnei tvachim. So it means you only have according to this, you only have it has to be above the red line at least 2 tvachim. I mean, you're 3 tvachim above. You only have those 2 tvachim really of leeway, and yet we say that you have to have you have an amma of leeway. So I guess we'll start now. We have to do this again tomorrow. Ella, we have to reinterpret the whole verse to get a different calculation. So back to the verse and back to the pictures. Ella cheka amma, rather this cheka amma, rather the chek was an amma, then the knisa was an amma. So here we have a picture. No. So when it says the cheka amma, what it means is it means here it says the indentation, but it means the width of the bottom base. Not the height, but it means the width over here. So here they have an A and B. So instead of A, that was our previous interpretation, we're now on B in that picture. So that's what it's referring to. It's going to be Cheka Amma is the Knisa. Elachek ama is the knisa. The knisa, the way you say that, it's the indentation, meaning it's the width. Then ama rochev is the knisa. It's ama rochev is the knisa, and gevula el svasa saviv knisa. So the base is indentation. Of the base is going to be an ama. The amma of width regarding that indentation is an amma. Gevula el svasa saviv knisa, and its border to its edge is going to be 1/2 all around. No picture. Is that not D? Let's see D. We're back to D now. Let's start from here tomorrow.